Farage, 5 million more people arriving here, settling in here on a net basis between 2022 and 2032.
Well, remember that the population has increased by more than 10 million in the last 20 years. More than 10 million. And so this projection from the Office of National Statistics says another 5 million. And we're all supposed to just accept it, say nothing, don't complain, or we're nasty people. And what's worth remembering, there is a consensus in this building between both the Labour and the Conservative parties. Whatever they say at general elections, whatever promises they make, they're both more than prepared to accept this. And my argument now, for many, many years, has been this is diminishing the quality of life for virtually everybody in this country. Why do I say that? Well, just suppose the government does build 1.5 million homes. That won't even be enough to cope with the numbers coming into the next 5 years, let alone the shortfall that we have now. Have a think about GP services. New homes still being built everywhere, no new GP practices, waiting times for a doctor, beyond anything our parents and grandparents could ever even have dreamt of. Traffic, I mean, don't even get me started. Our quality of life is diminishing because of this, but here's the key point. The majority of those that are coming don't work. You know the argument for the last 20 years?
What's your evidence of that?
I'll give it you. Don't worry, Nigel, it's good for the economy because everybody comes in works. Of the last 3 million that entered the country from outside the European Union under the last Conservative governments, of the last 3 million, only 22% are working. So here's the real kicker. Not only is living our lives more difficult, it's directly making us poorer. There is no argument for continued mass migration, and yet I fear it's going to continue.
Number 10 say today, repeatedly, these figures are staggeringly high. Chris Philp for the Tory party, they say these figures can and must be stopped. You're sniggering because the Tories have failed over 14 years.
I'm sorry. It isn't just failure. We all fail in life. But you can't promise in 2010 in a manifesto, in 2015 and 2017 to reduce to tens of thousands a year. Then again in 2019 to say a big reduction. And then in 2023 net, 1 million people come. So no one's going to take Chris Philp seriously at all. And what was really interesting in the general election, whenever Keir Starmer laid out his key 5 or 6 objectives, legal immigration was never one of them.
He won't set a cap. He says caps don't work, but we are expecting a white paper on net migration in coming weeks. They might get it right. These are projections based on current party policy. If they can tighten it even further, the figures might come down from where they are now.
There is no indication the Labour Party will change the barriers, the limits to legal migration, let alone what's coming across the English Channel. There's no indication they intend to do any of this at all. I suspect numbers will continue at massive historic levels. And remember this, from Windrush until almost the millennium, net migration was at 30,000 a year. Now it's running at up to 1 million a year. That just gives you some sense of perspective of just how mad this has all become.
Well, what would you do at Reform UK? You fought the election on a net zero target. Net zero is 5 million arriving over the next 10 years, isn't it?
Net zero would mean, and by the way, not the loony net zero, which means we don't produce our own oil and gas. Net zero means no population increase as a direct result of migration.
That's a net figure, though. So you might have over the next 10 years, 5 million arriving, 5 million leaving.
That's possible. People will come, people will go. But we would significantly tighten up the rules around those that come. We want people that come to be working. And frankly, the idea that one person comes, gets a job, and the whole of the family come from India is just not acceptable.
But they're stopping that, aren't they? They're stopping families coming.
I've been hearing they're stopping that for over 10 years. And it hasn't stopped. And the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger. We cannot afford it. It's damaging our way of life. We've got to get a grip.